G'day, welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. Today I've got a video which is going through our builds that are coming up. We're doing some chamber builds, or different cartridge builds I should say, for our upcoming ELR season, which is going to be starting where the weather dries out and the paddocks dry out and the crops are shaved again, so we get long paddocks to shoot into so we can do our ELR shooting. And I'm putting together some new rifles to do some testing in different calibers that people would like to see. But also for our own sake. So the three that we've got, or four actually, that we've got in process of that, one which we've already done, which we've shown a little bit with, which is a 260 Remington, which is in a Ticker T3, which we set up in a Southern Cross small arms chassis. So I've already shown you that one. That one's ready to go. The other three beyond that we're doing, one, which is a whole bunch of parts here, which I'll go through in a minute, but I'll go through the other ones to start off with. To the side here, we've got a pair of Swan Barrels. So first time I've used the Swan Barrels myself. I've got a 6mm in a 1/7 twist, and I've got a 270 in a 1/8 twist. Now, the 6mm, there was other builds I was going to do with it, but one I sort of set down the road of, went to go and do, didn't make happen, was actually taking my Hauer 1500 243, great rifle, shot really well, was the first one I started the process of stretching things out with many years ago. It's just a 24-inch 1/10 twist, and really it's not optimizing or not using a 243 to its fullmost for what we could use with new bullets and bits and pieces like that. I'm going to have over here the bullets I'm going to be using and I'd like to use, but these are a 109 grain 6mm Burger, which is a new bullet of theirs. We've done a little bit of testing in the 6mm Creedmoor, and I want to take that rifle up to it and probably go a step further. So I'm going to rebarrel that. I still have a good barrel, so it doesn't throw away the old barrel. It's still good, even at 2,500, 3,000 rounds. It's still operating well. But I just want to optimize the 243. So I'm actually going to go with a bit more than just a 243 Winchester. I'm going to go to the Ackley Improved, so that gives it a 40-degree shoulder. And I haven't made my mind up completely, but probably going to run to a 27-inch barrel. I think that's probably going to be a very sweet spot. It's going to be a real performer in that sort of level, and an ideal rifle at that sort of level. So that's what the 6mm is going to do. 1/7 twist, so it's got enough twist. You could probably go 1/7.5, but it's going to do the job really, really well in that level. The 270. Now that's in a Hauer 1500 long action I have, is where that's going to go. We've got one in a 270 already, but it's just a little sporter barrel. So we're going to go the same sort of thing, the 27-inch barrel. It's a 1/8 twist, and that's for the next one down. These are 170 grain Burger. So the Extreme Outer Limits, the EOL bullet, which needs the 1/8 twist. So that's why I've gone that far. So it's going to take the 7mm bullet and really take the 270 to as good as it can be for an ELR combination. I should explain that for a lot of people, which I think there's a lot of people that already know, but a lot of people that don't. The 270 is a 7mm. So I'm sure there's lots of people who say, well, why didn't you use the 7mm Rem Mag, or the 7mm SAUM, or the 7mm 08, or all the other 7mm? Truth of it is, none of the other 7mm, when we talk about a 7mm in the firearms, we're largely not talking about a 7mm. We're talking about a 7.2mm. The only real 7mm, maybe there's another cartridge, but only one I know of is the 270. Bit of the peculiar thing that the gun world has, yes, is, as I said it, the 270 is a true 7mm bullet. The normal thing that we call a 7mm is actually a 284. And it is a 7.2mm bullet. So we've sort of got that backwards in our industry, but that's what it is. So it means the 270 is a very, very specific cartridge, and really looking forward to using it. It should work really well. We're, like I said, optimizing it, but that's that little piece of information. That's the 170 grain Burgers that we're going to be running out of it. I'm sure there's some others. It's only ones I've found, but should do the job really well. 170 grain, good BC, 1/8 twist, should be an awesome shooter, so really looking forward to doing that. And then we go to the next bit. So it's been a difficult bit for me to figure out over the years as to get to this next place, and that's actually what I'm talking about, is the 300 Norma. And the reason the 300 Norma was difficult to get to was, although we have was that the 300 Norma is the lapel bolt face. So it isn't just the normal action you're going to go there. Although you can modify and take a Remington 700 Magnum action there, it's not ideal. It's really past its design platform, its design characteristics, or its maximums, in the way of it's a larger bolt. It's a larger base on the bullet. So lapel bolt face. So really, I have the lapel in the Seiko TRG. I didn't really want to use that platform. I would like to get a proper chassis into that rifle before I started to play that game, and I want to leave that as a TRG, is the truth of it. So I was always looking at what I was going to do action-wise, so what I was going to use action-wise, which was a fair bit of expense, which was part of the hurdle. But the other part of the hurdle was that it also opens you up to a lot of cartridges and pushing the boundaries a lot. So really, the minimum, a 300 Norma, you would get away without too much trouble in a Remington 700. But for where I wanted to go, which was potential of doing this build a lot further, I really wanted to do it really thoroughly. So I've sort of, I suppose you could say, defaulted. If you look at me, I would look at it more to the point we've gone back to the top of the pile. That is in this Barnard action here. So we've got, it's the lapel bolt face, it's the PL, but this is, well, a couple of things. It is the full Barnard with the Barnard trigger, and it really takes it to our big ones, our 50 BMG, our Gibbs, our 375 Gibbs, and now our Lapua are all in the Barnard action. So like I said, you could say I've sort of defaulted to what I always do. Really was a couple of reasons. One, it is doing it really, really thoroughly, and it gives me lots of scope for whatever else we end up doing, which is a bit more to the story, more than the Norma already, but I'll get to that in a minute. But it's also the fact that Barnard over there, when I reached out to them, said, listen, you know, I would like to do this. Can you help us out? Can you give us a good deal with this sort of stuff? They did. So they did help us out. It isn't a gift, but it is. They did a really good price for us, so it's another place to go. Not only do I know it and I trust them and I really like them, but also they helped us as well. So for those people who want to show them some love, they have really good products. So listen, certainly look that way. They certainly helped us. That's what I got. It's a little bit different. And that is that it's a left-hand eject, so it's got the ports on the left-hand side, the action's on the right-hand side. So for the way I do things generally anyway, which is have the ammo box on the left-hand side, which I suppose to explain to people a little bit of what I'm doing there, it's for a couple of reasons. One is I'm fairly ambidextrous, and swapping things over doesn't hurt me at all on that side of things, and it leaves my trigger hand to do its job, and my other hand is, I'm on the left-hand side of the rifle, being a right-hand shooter. I'm over this side of the rifle. I'm not reaching over the other side of the rifle, so it sort of works for that fluency of things. But it also works for camera positions. A lot of times we try and put into the video features of how things are actually happening. So watching the trigger hand and watching trigger control and that sort of stuff, not to the fact that I'd say I'm always perfect, but what I always try to be. And if my mind's doing the right thing, then it's there. But people like to see those details. So to have a camera where you can see that image without an ammo box in the road also works there. But anyway, it is left hand feed, right hand bolt. So it is also what I really like with these. This is set up with no extractor, so it simply pulls the action back. So I pull a bolt out with the bullet out with the cartridge, the shell out with my fingers. So that works for me, rather than brass flicking out in place, rather than me catching brass and that sort of stuff. I can put it out, put it in, pull it out, that sort of stuff. Going to work really nicely. So really looking forward to that. Super light and super controllable trigger. All the things I really like about the Barnard action is there. So that's all good, great. The little negative that went with that, and part of this little process, is that whenever you go, and this is pretty much the truth for any of the big custom actions, is you can't just buy a chassis generally just to bolt it into. Now, some of the manufacturers do a chassis, so you will find and go into specific places and you might find the option. A lot of the times you won't, depending on what your custom action is. And then there's Macmillan's, the stocks, there tends to be some of that sort of stuff. The way Barnard do it quite a bit is they sell actually an action block. So something that you can mount down into a chassis or down into a stock and resin it in there so that you do it that way around. The other way to do it, which actually is sort of interesting in its own level, and I'll get into this stuff in a second, is to modify a action block or a chassis. Which, and I suppose the interesting bit that I'd say that goes with that, before I actually talk about this thing that I've got in front of me, is that in actual fact, although a lot of modern chassis are built with the logic of being able to bolt straight together, no need for bedding, nothing, they've got V-blocks inside them, so they're always going to bolt together and be perfect, isn't actually the case. As much as chassis and CNC built things are very precise, a lot of our actions, and the likes of the Remington 700 in particular, but a lot of actions aren't actually that precise. So you'll tell with how you bolt them down. You bolt down one end and then find the other end has to pull it down into the chassis a little bit to make it mount up. Means that yes, you can actually get some advantages out of bedding even a modern chassis. Exactly the same process as what you'll bed when you're doing that in a wood chassis or in a composite chassis is you Gremel out, grind out, cut out whatever it is, a bit of the material. You make sure there's clear, make sure that it sits down properly onto the points it's going to sit down to, and then you use a high quality resin to be able to fill the gap, do the same release agent, all the same bits and pieces. So, and you'll actually find there's a lot of good gunsmiths that do glass bed, composite or a resin bed, so glass bed actions into chassis to get them to the next level. Not always needed and not something that is a definite thing, but in most cases with a factory action in particular, you'll find that there can be some benefits in accuratizing, that word, to make them bedded properly so everything settles properly, even when you've got V-blocks and that sort of stuff. So listen, that's something I may go into in a later date in a further detail, but the reason I'm touching on it right now is that both those things, I wanted to, I suppose, there was other ways I probably could have scanned the cat, but I really wanted to, in this build, do a whole chassis build in using a chassis and modifying it to suit. So I get absolutely optimized things, and the whole logic of doing this so thoroughly in the Lapua side of things is that it can go a lot further than the beginning places I'm starting, which is a 300 Norma. Well, we're to that point. I have this piece here that I'm talking about. Now this is actually the I suppose in thinking about going through the process, this happened a little bit into it. I had another couple of chassis that I've got here that I was looking at modifying and taking to things and making it work with this action. I didn't have the action at that point, so I wasn't sure everything was going to fit, all that sort of stuff. But then in speaking to my friend over there, Gareth Crook, over at GCPD, we recently did a review on his Elite Series rifle. And we're talking about some other bits and pieces, and I mentioned what I was up to, and he said, listen, I might have something that I can help you with there. A little bit down the track, he checked it out and had an idea. Once again, we didn't have the action in place, that was coming from Barnard, but what he actually had and what he was actually thinking about was this. Now this is not something you can buy. This has been sitting in a default or not used parts bin. This was an action, and I've forgotten exactly what he built this action for, or the action block I should say. So the centerpiece of his chassis system. And it's a slightly different design to what he ended up running, I think, for the Magnum or the long action T3s, but not really sure on that side of things. Doesn't really matter. It's something that has passed by. He'd done this as part of a CNC setup where he'd machined it, made some changes, machined another one, and then the final thing was a few evolutions down the track, which he ended up using. But this was one that had been built that was all machined properly in a semi-finished form, which wasn't never going to find another place. So it's something that I could use, and he suggested it to me. What that went with, just to look a little further forward, was it still fitted this is his current version, and it fits that, which is the off his Elite series, the buttstock. So it's adjustable butt pad, all the bits and pieces. This in its raw form, so it's taken off the assembly line, and it goes straight into the back of this here. There's a bolt that connects it together, but a very good, very solid, very well built buttstock, which meant that I could use that. Gareth did a good price for us. He's helping us out, but that meant that we got this really good buttstock to use. Got a big bag rider to go on the back of it. I might use that rubber, I might use another one on the back. There's a couple of choices, but that's where it went there. On the fore end, various fore ends, he's designed it so that it takes, this is actually a spigot for the same fore end as what I've got on the 300 rum build, the 300 PRC 300 rum build, which we're using his chassis for. It's got the same bit that bolts on there. That's the fore end part. It has a tube. I'm going to do it different, and I'll get to that in a minute. But it meant that by using this, I had some flexibility in things, and it builds it into where I also then had to modify it a lot. I've already done the basics of that. You'll see that this has been modified where I had to relieve it out to fit the big fella in, but that actually fits in there. So the action, I've got to do a lot of finishing, but the action actually goes in there, fits in there, will operate in there. So I've already done the relieving on the inside of this. Pull that back out of there. I've already relieved it out, so milled out inside here, milled out the back, put a different trigger bolt position place in there, taken out the side of this thing here, relief for the slot down the side, so the port is fully exposed. And then what I'm going to do is fill, he's got a magazine well. This is a single feed, exactly what I want, the strongest way it can be done, and the way I prefer to shoot. I'm going to fill all this with resin. I'm going to fill up the gaps down here with resin, so this is going to become a big, solid, heavy component that is super strong and is going to look great, and I suppose as good as I could do this in the way of building my own chassis without building my own chassis. So that's it. The resin side of things is, like I said, the same as you do glass bedding on anything. I'll put a release agent on here. I will actually put studs into where I want the 3 action screws to go. So I'll put studs that go down into the resin. I'll let it all set. I'll pull the thing out. Then I'll drill the studs through. Then I'll actually turn it over and I'm going to drill through the back here. There's all sorts of stuff. And I'll show you it in its finished form and probably some snaps of what I had to do to get to that place. But it gives me a really solid piece that works well in the middle. And I also then am flexible. I can take other components if I want to put different fore ends on, and I'll go into a little bit of that. To start off with, if you put the back on here, I found that it's made to where this is just going to get in the road of pulling the bolt right out. Now you can obviously pull this in and out, but I need a pretty long length pull for the human that I am, so I've made a simple spigot. So a spigot that goes in here, that goes in the back there, so that's where it goes together neatly on that score. Just a slightly longer bolt in there, and I've pushed it back, so that's a very easy thing to do with the way Gareth designed that. As said, I've already designed myself a big heavy bag rider to go on the back of it, so that works really nicely there. The fore end side of things, I'm setting this up, and right at the moment it's for the 300 Norma. But what I have, I shouldn't speak too loudly about, it's not here yet, but it's all coming, it's all just about to ship, and that's actually a structured barrel from John at TACOM. So we've got a structured barrel coming, and we've got coming from David Tubb, organised through, or John from TACOM is actually sending us as well some brass, some dies to do the 300 XC from David Tubb. So from what I understand, XC is extra capacity, so it's essentially, and I haven't seen it, I haven't done the research on it yet properly, it was an option I had, so I took it. It's a souped up 338 Lapua Magnum. So extra capacity, longer case, so big heavy hitter in the structured barrel. So it should be a really good place to test the structured barrel. Super strong action, well set up, everything else. But to do that, I need to allow for a very big barrel. 42 millimeters is what I'm dealing with, is an OD of the barrel. So I'm going to machine this piece out so that the barrel can get right through to there. And what I'm actually doing is my own little custom thing. I want to run my bipod system on the front of it. This is the muzzle brake I'm going to run on there. So it's a big bore muzzle brake, slightly tapered design, one of my new muzzle brakes. So big hitter of a muzzle brake to go on the front of it. And what I've actually got, this isn't actually the piece of aluminium. This is a normal piece of aluminium tube. I have some some aircraft grade, so a 6082 aluminium that I'm actually going to weld to the front of this. So make it so it welds there, so then I can have a full 45 or 46 mil bore is what I'm going to end up with on this aluminium forward. So that's how big a barrel I'm going to be able to run through this system, machine the end down so it runs my bipod system on the front of it. For those that aren't familiar with my bipod system, it's set up so I can sit it on the bench, but it actually takes Atlas legs. These are the long Atlas leg, and it takes that whole mechanism and puts it on something that can actually rotate around a spigot on the front of your barrel. So I found them really good to use, really good to work with, nice and wide, lots of elevation, extension ability in the things. They fold away really nicely and neatly in both. Obviously you've got the normal Atlas features, but by the fact they're up there, they end up tucking away to where they're up alongside your barrel. There we go. They're up alongside your barrel and go in your gun case and all that sort of stuff really easily. So I really like them. And I found them very easy to use, very stable, all that sort of stuff. So that with welding onto there is how that's going to go together. Obviously, like I said, pistol grip. That'll take any of the ARs. I quite like the MDT pistol grips when I can get them. They're nice shape. They get a nice sort of swell. I quite like the slanted back, but I'm not too fussed in either form about that side of things. But that's our build. And yes, that means that build is now turned into 300 Norma, so we can test it properly alongside the rum. This is the main bullet we're probably going to be shooting. Down the bottom here is the 245 grain 30 cal. We also have the 250 grain A-tips. We can compare those things in the 300 Norma side of things against the 300 rum. And then we have this, the 33XC, or the souped up 33 at Lapua. That's what we're planning on getting to the point of testing. And then also with this really great core, based around this Barnard action, we have the ability to try some of those other things. So whether that's the 30378 or it's a 300 Weatherby or all those bits and pieces that builds down the track, obviously depending on how much we're helped by people in the way of the fun side of it, lots of money going to this sort of thing, as you can see. But I'm super happy to do this. It's sort of right in my wheelhouse. Whoops. It's going to be completely custom, and yet without doing the extra hard yards of designing from scratch. I'm using someone else's very good design as a platform. Get to work with Gareth. I really like his stuff and the way he does things, so being able to use his components on the back here, and same sort of thing. They are very good components. They are certainly built up to a quality, not down to a price, so it's not the cheapest stuff, but money for value, I think it's way up there. It's really good stuff, and really like working with the guy and the way he does things. So once again, if you want to show him some love, he is helping us out. We have good prices. None of this stuff ends up for free, but these people are helping us, so I want to be honest and full disclosure about that side of things. But listen, like I said, it's going to turn into something custom, something special, something that I think will look great. Oh, here's the last bit hidden behind here. The other feature that the likes of the Barnard stuff is they do the big rails. So this is a 60 MOA rail. I don't know what sizes they do up to, but at least 60. I know they do 10s and 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, and probably can go further, I don't know. But it means that I can set up exactly what I want without having to get special there. I ordered it with the action. It's how it came. So yeah, excited. Should be really good. Anyway, I think that's about an overview of what I can tell you. Looking forward to these barrels, and these two barrels, the two actions they go to. This action is going to go over to a Madco barrel, which is I've got a 31-inch, 32-inch Madco barrel in a 1-in-9 twist in the 30 cal that's waiting over at Brett Thompson, my gunsmith. He's the guy who does all the chambering for me. And yes, I'm a gunsmith. I don't do chambering. I'm not enough into it. I really want to use the best to do that sort of stuff. Brett does an awesome job and really helps us. So we pay for it, don't get me wrong, it's not for free, but he does a great job with it. So he's actually got 3 barrels to do for us in the immediate future, and at whatever time frame that actually turns into. But next time you should be looking at a rifle built. And like I said, I'll see if I can organise some snaps through the process so you can see it. But this is the bunch of parts that I'm starting with to build that one, and we'll have some other stuff to bring to you soon. Anyway guys, thanks for checking in on us. Catch you next time.